Hi all, so today you're joining me from my house. I've decided to fit some quick disconnect connectors to my RB25 engine harness. So I thought I'd sort of document it and see how we get on with it. The harness is currently, it's a good harness. It's a custom made wiring Specialties harness, which was posted over from the States, which is great. Just with the RB25 inlet manifolds, it's a pain in the arse to get the connectors plugged in or disconnected with the engine in the car, and it is a little bit tight going around the back of the engine. So what I thought is I'll fit some quick disconnects so that I can, if I want to remove the engine, disconnect the cables and bring the engine out with all the harness still attached and disconnect that separately, so I've got more access to it all. Should be an alright task, I think. The main thing is just labelling it all up, finding the right place to chop and ensuring the crimps are all well done and nothing's going to interfere. So I've got a time lapse of us removing the the engine harness from the car. It's not very exciting, but there we are. And then I'm just going to I'm going to start going through my harness now, labelling each side, working out what I'm going to put to what pin, and then I'll make the chop. Once I've done that, I'll double check all the gauges of the wire, and I'll order the correct Deutsch connector, and we'll go from there. Made a good start. I'll just spin it around. I've split off the sheathing stuff, the little fabric sheathing. It's a bit messy, but I'll buy some more. Once I've chopped the harness in half, I'll be able to slide some either way. And I've removed 3 plugs from the loom. I thought instead of there's no point in pinning extra pins for these new connectors if I'm not using them. So I'm currently not using the O2 sensor, the speed sensor or the reverse sensor. So I've chopped them out with some bits of wiring. That leaves me with a harness of all the bits I'm actually going to be using on the car. So next thing I'll go through, I'll label all of these cables to each side with a pin number and also what they are, and then I'll make the chop ready to get them pinned together. So I've got this harness now, I've stripped all the sheathing off. I found a good place to chop. We're going to go here, sort of in between splices both sides for things like earths. And then what I've done is I've labelled every single wire both sides to do with the size of the core. So here's my sort of wiring diagram. The connector I'm buying has got 46 connections. So far we used 34, and the green ones are basically for thicker cores, so like this black 20 gauge, that should go in there, all the rest should go in the other pins. Fine, so what I'm going to do next is I'll chop it in half. Any splices that are quite close like this, I'll just relocate further up the loom so there's no splices or heat shrink close to where the connector's going to be. Hi all, so I'm back working on this wiring harness. I've been working on it for a few days actually between work and doing other bits and pieces, getting it ready for the Deutsch connectors to arrive. So they've arrived here. These are the 2 multi-pin connectors. There's quite a lot of prep work involved in getting everything ready for them to go together, to be honest. Splitting the harness, finding a good place to make the join, stripping enough cable back. Also, there's lots of splices in the loom where certain wires join, so it's finding a good place, moving any splices further or forward or backward in the loom to make sure that you don't end up with a splice just going into the connector. So you've got quite a lot of flex and there's not going to be any issues. So I spent quite a bit of time on that. So with this harness I've got 39 pins that I need to pin in. So that's chopping the harness in half, labelling it 39 times on both sides. So these are sort of both ready to get put together. I hope it works. So yeah, the next step is I've just gone over it again. I've added got some heat shrink that I've put around it, got some of the fabric tape, and I've got some of this mesh stuff. So that's on here ready to get pulled back once I've done my soldering and I've taken all this paper off. So the next thing I'm going to do is obviously I'll make sure that all these ends are cut to roughly the same length, otherwise the connector's going to be all skew-iff and off to one side. And then I'm going to start putting the pins in. I don't know if I'm going to put all the pins on first and then poke them into the connector. I think I might, so I'll pin it all up. I've colour coded on this list which ones are the thicker pins. So I've got 5 or 6 pins that are thicker gauge wire, so they need a thicker pin. So you start in the centre and it goes clockwise all the way out until you've got no pins left. So I'm going to start pinning it up and I'll set a time lapse going and I'll come back with what my thoughts are. I've not done this before, so it's quite a little bit daunting, but I'm sure it'll be fine. The engine's on its way back this week actually, so I'd like to get this finished and fitted back in the car by the weekend, so at the weekend I can dick around with building that all back up and getting it ready for the fabrication to be done before it to go about mapping, so yeah. This ended up spreading over quite a few days now, and I'm just fitting this in around work and other things. It's quite labour intensive. I've done one side, that's all set up. I'm leaving all these tags on for now, and I'm not bringing up any of the heat shrink or the shielding. It's relatively easy to do. The main thing is obviously just keep making sure that all your strands are the same length, otherwise you can get some weird kinky bits. Also, it bloody kills your fingers, like the ends of your fingers, stripping the cables, twisting the copper, trying to poke it in, but also you have to put quite a bit of force to push them in to make them pop into the end. So I have to break it up into shifts with my weak fingertips. So next step is I'll do the ECU side. I'll get all that crimped up to this fitting. Once that's done, I'll join it together. I'm not going to take any of the tape off or any of the labels off just yet. Once that ends on, I'll join the two together and then I'll try and continuity test between the ECU plug and all the sensors to make sure there's nothing crossed or not lined up properly. And then once I've done that, I will then rip off all the tape and then clean it all up nice and neat, ready to fit into the car. Cool, right, I'll start on this side. Yeah, so I thought I'd show you how to do one anyway. So we're doing the male pins. Got one big one in there, looks like with number 2. Now these pins are tiny, only a tiny bit goes into the end of it. So you strip the wire off the end. It's all just so delicate. You've got a tiny bit of wire on the end. Give that a few twists. Poke that onto the end. Oh. So fiddly. So that sticks on there, and you've got these crimpers, basically it pokes into the middle, and like 4 arms poke out and crimp it down. So that goes in there. Cool. That's on there now. Give it a tug. It's not coming off. You basically, with these, you start in the middle and you work around. So you start with 1, 2, 3, 4, and it goes round and round and round in spirals. So we've got number 1 in. Now we go backward spiral on this side. Okay. So all you do is you get your pin, you poke it into the correct hole, which is this one here. Poke that in, and then you've just got to sort of feed it through. You'll start to see it appear through this side there, and then it should pop into place. There we go. So that's popped into place now. It should be nice and firm. So it is nice and easy. It's just a bit fiddly. It's just a bit fiddly. Yeah, there you go. So that's both sides done, the ECU side and the engine side. What a faff. It'd be worth it in the end, not having to strip all the plugs off the engine in the car. But yeah, what a task. Turns out if you muck up any of the pins, if you try and pull a wire out, the pins get stuck inside. You can't get them out, so you can't reuse that hole. It just takes a lot of concentrating. So obviously I've used 44 of the 45 pins, so obviously doubling up. That's 88 pins you've got to strip, crimp, and make sure they're in the right holes. Next thing, I'm going to meter out end to end, make sure it's all correct, make a plan of what's actually in what pin, just so if there's any issues it's easier to problem solve, and then I can strip off all these crap labels and make it look nice and neat and fit it to the car. So yeah, all good so far. So this is the engine harness on the engine. I've got to say, it does fit better than it ever has. Normally, I have to fit this harness on in the car because it's got a massive ECU plug on it and you don't want to get it damaged or whatnot. So because of the inlet manifold on the RB25, it's a pain in the arse to get to the plugs underneath and all the plumbing and wiring. So being able to put the harness on with the engine outside of the car has been a bit of a game changer. Just small things like being able to route things a little bit better. It's just a lot neater, a lot easier to get to. You know that all your plugs are plugged in correctly. You know, nothing's hanging out, nothing's damaged. So I'm really, really happy with that, to be honest. It has made it worth the effort. And I know this looks a little bit crude. I've taken all the masking tape off and I've label printed each one. So what the actual plug is, and what multi-pin pin is, and what ECU pin it is. So it does look a bit messy. I could have probably sleeved this a bit higher, but you're not going to see it anyway. And in terms of problem solving or fault finding, if I have an issue, I'd rather have a bit more space to play with it. Also, the tighter, because they're all going in together and there's very little crimp area on the actual pins, I didn't want to get too close with the sheathing, because if you were to bend the plug, there's no movement for the wire. You're going to start putting a lot of strain on some of the pins. So obviously the longer these strands are, the more flexibility I have in the plug. So it does look a bit messy. But if I have an issue, it'll be much easier to work out. And obviously I've done this on the other side of the other bulkhead connector as well. So worst case scenario, God forbid, I have an issue, I could pull 2 of the pins out, chop block them together, and that should give me a full circuit again. So that's the engine harness, that's waiting ready to go in. And then this is the other side of it. I need to do a bit more tidying up. So that's the bulkhead connector fitted up, which I'm really happy with. It's really nice and neat. I'm building a heat shield at the moment, which will come up and over that, because the last thing I want is this thing to melt or get damaged or whatnot. So yeah, that's the wiring harness. Next job, I'm literally waiting for some Hell Performance, braided oil and coolant lines. The engine can go in, we can plug that bulkhead connector in, and we should be able to get it started. So yeah, sorry if this video has been a bit of a pain. Yeah, things just take longer than what you think sometimes, I guess. So yeah, I'll leave you with this one, and I'll try and get the other one sorted so it all makes a little bit more sense. Cheers.